there is a common misconception, and even though, for clarity's sake, we all pretty much understand that it's more than just 10 commandments. It's 10 statements. They're general statements, or 10 sayings is more accurate. This isn't mere semantics. There is something to this. At Mount Sinai, contrary to common misconception, the Jews received the entire Torah, not just 10 commandments. It was a full-blown download of the 1,613 mitzvahs, and not just the commandments. This was done in such a supernatural way. Have you heard someone say right before an accident or a traumatic event to where they thought they were going to die, said that they saw their life flash before their eyes? We've heard that term. Well, it literally is not your life flashing by like a television screen. It's like a download of your life instantaneously. And very much the same way, it seems that this is what they received. Ironically, the Haftarah portion in Ezekiel is very interesting, because Ezekiel in the Haftarah portion for Shavuot is attempting to describe the Creator, blessed be He, but still, though it contains many incredible words of description and adjectives, statements of color and fine jewels, it's still a metaphor, because it is impossible, and it was impossible for Ezekiel to try to describe what he was seeing. And if you go through and read that Haftarah portion over and over, you'll hear this word like similarly to blah, blah, blah. It depends on the translation. But he would provide a description, and then he would have to say, well, it's like that. Because there is no physicality when it comes to the essence and nature of the Creator of the universe. And the only thing that a man or woman can see in that altered state of prophecy is another dimension that exists outside of our capabilities to even understand it. And so you have this in the reading of Ezekiel, and we'll probably return to it in a little bit and read some of it. But when you look at Ezekiel and what he writes down, now you can understand why at Sinai the Jewish people were so blown away by the event itself. Now, 3,700 years later, we open up this book and read these statements, and we read these words of how the people responded. And honestly, it doesn't come anywhere near the mind-blowing event that this really is. The Midrash points out that 620 letters that make up this word in Hebrew called Eseret Chedebrot. This corresponds to the 613 mitzvahs plus the 7 days of creation, or also known, we know, the 7 Noahide laws and the 7 rabbinic mitzvahs that are listed. Now, even on a more basic level, the 10 Commandments contain one more, just 10 specific mitzvahs. For example, according to Maimonides, the second statement actually contains 4 separate mitzvahs. Let's look at them. Number 1, do not believe in any other God. Number 2, not to make graven images. Number 3, not to bow down to idols. And number 4, not to worship an idol as in its customary way of being worshiped. Yet the Torah itself, in a number of places, explicitly calls them 10 statements. So what is the significance of specifically 10 statements? When referring to the 10 Commandments, the Torah calls them the words of the covenant. And it says, quote, and he inscribed upon the tablets the words of the covenant, the 10 commandments. In turn, the tablets were called the two tablets of the covenant. Thus, these 10 commandments were meant as the covenant between God and the Jewish people, just as there was covenant between Abraham and God. The Midrash explains that the 10 commandments correspond to the 10 utterances which God created, let there be light, as well as the 10 sephirot of the divine attributes or emanations of the Creator, which are also the source of corresponding 10 faculties of the soul. Now, we look at all of these numbers and see they're all tied in some mysterious way. All of these things will blend in together to be man's feeble way of describing the magnitude of the giving of Torah. The Midrash explains that the 10 commandments are connected to many other things in the Torah that are associated with the number of 10, the 10 generations of Adam to Noah, or the 10 generations of sons of Shem to Abraham, and the 10 tests with which God tested Abraham, and the 10 blessings our forefathers received, the 10 plagues, the 10 curtains in the tabernacle, etc. The number 10 represents what? Wholeness, right? Completion, perfection. Thus, all of these ideas are interconnected, reflecting on the common purpose. The Zohar states that God looked at the Torah and created the world. How many have actually heard that phrase before? Yes. So God looked at the Torah, and it was the blueprint of creation. Everything contained in creation was contained within the Torah itself. The mystics explained that the purpose for creation was that God desired that we make a dwelling place for him down here in physicality, in the mundane, the materialistic world. Thus, our purpose is to refine ourselves in the world around us by using the physical world to serve God, thereby uplifting the mundane, materialistic world and transforming it into something very holy. Why is the number 10 associated with the Torah as well as the creation of the world, the 10 sephirot? Though through the fulfillment of the Torah and the mitzvahs, we reach completion on the purpose as the purpose of creation. We reach completion in this world. I was having a discussion with someone about someone that we know that had a pretty terrific failing in their life. And it was a very public thing. Like, everybody knew of this particular failing. And this was a person considered to be at the highest end of morality and integrity. And in one moment of a news article, everybody found out. It was all over television. And this person obviously was very humiliated. The guy's wife was humiliated. The children were humiliated. And we're discussing it. My wife and I are discussing it some 15 or 20 years later and thinking, that people often forget that this is the way life works, right? Is no matter how much of a tzaddik this person was, this was a failing based on his choices, his free choice. And yet he's maintained his integrity after the event. Now, does he still have to deal with the consequences? Yes, he has to. But the way that we bring holiness into the world is even through our weaknesses and frailties. We bring holiness in the world when we fail and we sin and we get back up and we transform again. And I said, it is a shame that we're living in a society that once someone does that, they're pretty much discounted by their contemporaries for many, many years. And no contemporary would say, oh, well, it was just a mistake and it's going to be good for him and his family, because everybody just sees the devastation that takes place. But God put us in this world with all of its nuances and all of its capability to either hurt you or make you a better person. And we talk about the vastness of the giving of Torah at Sinai, this powerhouse of Torah. It's as equal to creation itself. Is equal. If we could have been there at creation, could you imagine how gobsmacked we would have been at seeing how the world was created? This is the same experience that the children of Israel and also those who were Ger amongst them. This is exactly what they saw at Sinai. And it was a mind-blowing event. And yet every year at this time, we celebrate this, not in the grandeur of flashing lights and thunder and lightning and sound and voices, but a very simple sitting down and reading a text or listening to rabbis teach this evening until late as you can, picking up a book tomorrow and reading through the Haftorah portion for Shavuot. That we're doing in such a very, very small way. But metaphysically and spiritually, we are connecting all the way back to Sinai and all the way back to creation. And when I say we, I literally mean we. I'm not just talking about the Jewish people, but also the pious of the nations that study Torah, that began to examine themselves and say, how can I, in this very physical world that has all of its imperfections, how can I elevate my world and make it a more beautiful place? How can I recreate creation for myself around me? How can I take that which is formless and make order to it? And when we read the Torah portion about the giving of Matan Torah, God began to order the children of Israel. What was the first thing that he said? Set boundaries. Remember that? Set the boundaries around Sinai. And that should be the first statement to all of us. The very first thing that we need to do this year, and before we go any further, is set up the boundaries around the Torah, that which protects and maintains and facilitates the security of Torah in our life, that it becomes the prime directive in everything we do. And yet we would want to avoid any situation where we would encroach against the Torah or do something that we should not do.